Do you want to know what it's like to go on a barrel pick? Well, let me tell you about my first experience. Let's go. Welcome back to Old Fashioned Ways Plus Plus. I am Doc Martinez and I recently just got my bottles in from this pick. So today I'll be talking about my Garrison Brothers barrel pick experience.
Yes! 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 Yes!
This was not my barrel pick. It was with a group called New Braunfels Bourbon. This group is a great group and I really enjoy everything they are doing. They have hangouts, they have bottle shares, they have group picks and so much more. I just wish I lived closer so I could actually do more and participate with this group a little bit more. Well, let's get into my first time experience. Our pick was on Sunday morning of St. Patrick's Day.
St. Patrick's Day.
But my experience did not start there, it actually started the day before. I had never been to Garrison Brothers, so my wife and daughter and I decided that we'd head out there to check it out and kind of scope out the lay of the land.
Go on up there and scope it out. Nobody's gonna recognize you.
I am so glad we did. Garrison Brothers is such a fun place with an inviting atmosphere, live entertainment, food, and some good pours. My wife and even my daughter really enjoyed it, and I did grab a bottle while I was there, knowing that in Texas you can't buy on a Sunday. Alright, let's talk about my barrel pick experience. We all met up that morning outside of the gate, and it was the first time I was meeting everybody from that group in person. Now, I had chatted with a few of them, and my buddy Danny was my main contact over there, and it was the first time I got to meet him in person as well. The group was so amazing. They were so great, they were friendly, and they immediately offered me a drink. It was St. Patrick's Day, so I said, why not? It's 5 o'clock somewhere, right?
Well, it's 5 o'clock somewhere.
Next, we were greeted at the gate by Lynn Hall, who's Director of Operations. So the Director of Operations actually gave us the tour. We drove up on this little windy back road up into the distillery. There's where she started the tour with a little bit of history and taking us through the distillery. Explain how bourbon is made and how they started. It's actually a very fun story. I would recommend you reading about it and seeing how this Texan, Dan Garrison, went to Kentucky and wanted to learn how to make bourbon. And the funny thing is they welcomed him and thought this crazy Texan wants to learn how to make bourbon. They wanted to see what he could do.
Show us what you got.
One of the cool things about Garrison Brothers, it's actually the first legal Texas distillery. They took us into the first part, walked us in, showed us how Garrison Brothers is distilled, where the fermentation process happens, showing us and explaining everything to us and allowing us to ask questions. It was then afterwards that they took us to the new expanded area where they have new tanks because they wanted to expand so that they can actually make bourbon 24/7. You heard me right. They make bourbon 24/7.
No way.
After that, they walked us back to where the original still was, and it's crazy. The first still at Garrison Brothers Distillery was a small 100-gallon pilot still that Dan Garrison purchased from Elmer T. Lee.
No, it is so small!
They are still using that small distill today, plus a few extras. Now, master distiller is Donis Todd, and he arrived at the distillery and pitched to Dan on hiring him. He was actually trying to pitch himself because the company didn't have a lot of money at that time. But to Garrison's credit, he did pick up Donis, and he is still the master distiller today. One of the neat things about Garrison Brothers is they have female distillers helping break ground for women in bourbon. Now, let's get to the fun part. We walk over to the barn, and this is the Rick House. Outside of it, they have this amazing statue of a bull. And there's a funny story behind that, but that's something we're going to have to talk about on a different day. Now, as they open the barn doors to this rick house, this is where they store all the single barrel program barrels. You walk in and you just have that aroma just hit you. The smell of bourbon in the air, that angel share in the air. It's beautiful. All these barrels are just sitting there. You get to look at and just see and walk through. It's an amazing way to show off the barrels. Here we were met by Samantha Olvera, who is in charge of helping us get and pick our barrel for that day. She did lay some ground rules out that we had to follow, but nothing too extreme.
Second rule of Fight Club is you do not talk about Fight Club.
A lot of fun to be had for sure. Then she handed out a few drills and we were off to drill a few barrels. They let us pick 5 barrels from all the barrels that were sitting there, but we had the option that if we wanted to, we could pick another one if we needed to. Now, this was so much fun. Looking at barrels, seeing the ages, the weather, the ones that leaked, and just getting to go through all of them and climb and pick and look through here just to see, okay, which of these are we going to choose from? How are we going to choose 5 from these few hundred barrels we have in front of us?
Impossible!
But once we did, the samples were poured, put on a table, and with the paper for notes, and the tasting begins. Now, there were 6 main tasters making the decision for this barrel pick. However, we all got to partake in it and taste and give our opinions on and our tasting notes. In the end, I think it was a banger of a bottle, and this is what I'm drinking right now, and I still think it is. But the fun does not end there.
I say we keep this party going.
Garrison Brothers has an executive chef on property, and he was there that day on a Sunday to serve us an amazing meal. It was a culinary delight for sure. So as we sat there and ate this wonderful meal, they got the barrel down from the area it was in, which was a lot of work, I'm telling you, and took it over to another building where we were gonna dump and bottle. And the cool thing is, we were actually able to be there for that whole process. We got to watch them dump it, we got to watch them weigh the bourbon. And there she dumped it. Then they even proofed it. And of course, we got to sign the barrel. Just look how dark that looks.
So dark.
Now, when they first started the distillery, they didn't have any employees to bottle the bourbon they were making. So, Dan thought outside the box, recruited neighbors and friends to help with the bottling. And of course, he paid them with barbecue, beer, and of course, bourbon. Now, this has actually become a tradition.
Tradition.
There's a long list of volunteers who want to help dip the top of the bottles in the wax. So, as part of the barrel pick program, we also got to bottle our own whiskey and dip them as well. So, we started by adding the bourbon to the bottle. Then we checked to make sure nothing was in the bottle with the light behind the bottle. Moving on to corking, and then the fun part, we gotta wax the bottles. Now, they gave us a brief demonstration and to make sure we were safe, and we jumped in to try our hand at it. The hardest part was actually holding the bottle upside down to let the wax strip off and stop dripping and dry enough, just enough, so you can actually stamp that Garrison star on the top. Now, the topping on the cake is that we actually got to sign one.
It's all icing on the cake.
So this bottle here that I'm drinking today shows me putting my name, 22, and the date that it was done, and putting my cheap version of a 4-leaf clover because it was St. Patty's Day. After all this was done, it was now just a waiting game. We did have to wait a few months for RNDC to pick up and take it to 1844 Liquor Market out of Brenham. That process can be very quick and it can take a few months like it did in this case. But luckily we are patient. Luckily we have these bottles now. Luckily they have the 1844 Liquor Market to help with this process as well. Wow, this was an amazing day. This was my first experience and I just loved it. It was a great time with amazing people, and I think that's also what makes it so much better. One day I would love to have my own Garrison Brothers barrel pick, but I am far from that at this moment. However, since then, I have been able to experience a few other barrel picks. Now, if you like this video and you want me to do a video on each of those barrel picks, let me know in the comments below. I will definitely be making an old fashioned out of this because it's just such a great pour. Thanks my friends for joining me on another journey down my bourbon rabbit hole. To our next journey, my friends, cheers.